Hello, Mike. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me on Salesforce Chef. I'm really excited to be on your program today.
Mike, I can't tell you how excited I am, and all my friends whom I told about the work you do, about how you have succeeded as a blind Salesforce developer. People are just amazed, and I didn't. Before I learned about you, I didn't even know there was even such people. So I can't wait to learn about you and your organization. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Mike, most important thing, most interesting thing. Who are you? Can you tell me about yourself?
I don't know how interesting it is. However, background, I was born in Ohio, so the Great Lakes region, Northeast Ohio, actually. I grew up right on Lake Erie until I was 12. And my mom and brother and I moved out to Colorado. My mom really wanted some better opportunities for my brother and I. The job market and things were really dry up there in the what they call the Rust Belt, and she was really hoping the public school systems were really pushing my mom to put me into a school for the deaf and blind, and she absolutely refused. However, she heard some great things about schools here in Colorado, and so we moved out here summer of 1985. The county that we moved to here actually had some great teachers for the visually impaired. They came to my school. They started teaching me Braille and adaptive technology, and really my education started to really improve after being in Colorado. I graduated high school long time ago now, 30 years ago, 1990. I met my now wife in 1992-ish. So I was a young man, and we got married in 1995. We have 3 kids. Let's see here. I always like to share that a little bit about myself on a personal side as well. So married over 25 years now with 3 kids. Let's see here. Professionally, I went to a program. So IBM, right after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990 under George H.W. Bush. IBM put out a grant to 3 community colleges, and the Community College of Denver, downtown Denver, was one of those community colleges. And essentially, they wanted to create a technology training program for people with disabilities. Thus, the name of the program was Computer Training for People with Disabilities. That program has since gone away. However, I graduated in the mid 90s with a certificate of application programming. Went into technology, so mid 90s, and really all my technology career was 100% telecommunications. And and I spent about almost 20 years in telecommunications. So I'll stop there because I have a tendency to ramble.
So when you went to Community College of Denver, you learned to program?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So IBM, they adopted accessible tech back in the 80s, mid 80s. They started doing accessibility pretty early on, and it was actually pretty common to have totally blind COBOL mainframe developers. So, and coding is one of those, since it's very logical, since it's, if then else statement. So, it's a 3GL language, the 3rd generation programming language. So very English oriented. It just took, with the IBM, the mainframes, the 3270s, 3290s, it was very like CLI, command line interface friendly. So it was really just memorizing, commands, how to find stuff. So IBM really adopted this pretty early on, and actually, command line interfaces are innately really accessible to blind techies globally. It wasn't
Really?
until the advent of kind of our kind of the internet 2.0, during the late 90s, when everything started becoming object oriented, because pre web internet as we know it today, things were a lot more pure HTML, which hypertext multi-language was really accessible at that time. So and actually email was actually created as a universal way to make communicating accessible, not only to blind visually impaired people, but also to the deaf community.
Really?
Yeah, so a lot of things that came out early on were absolutely meant to overcome accessibility challenges.
So you're saying emails were first used by blind people?
Not necessarily first used by, but so many accessibility accessible technologies that we take advantage of today were started and thought of to overcome accessibility challenges. So like
Really?
like automatic opening doors at the mall, airport, name whatever place has automatic opening doors. They started because of the wheelchair community back in the 70s.
Wow.
So many of the technologies, like, so the Hey Google, Hey Siri, Hey Alexa, all of those technologies, those basically text to voice, that was the blindness community has been using text to voice technology since the 80s.
Wow.
So many of the technologies that are very ubiquitous today are truly because kind of the necessity is the mother of invention, right? Well, for people with disabilities, leveraging technology, accessible technology, has always helped us overcome challenges.
Interesting. So interesting. So you were a COBOL programmer, right?
Way back in the day, yes, sir.
Initially,
And then I moved into network engineering. So Cisco certified, and the great thing about those platforms is they were all CLI. They were all command line interfaces.
Interesting.
So it made it really easy for screen reader technologies.
So as a blind person, were you paid well, like a non-blind person, or was there
Yeah, I was absolutely fairly compensated. I ended my career as a six-figure engineer.
Really?
So I wasn't just a typical blind person that they used as a quota. I was the token blind person. However, I took on seven-figure projects over my career. So I like to say I was a badass blind tech engineer. So
Wow, so interesting, so fascinating. And when you as a so fascinating that you can, that's even possible. And were there any challenges that, like, were you slower? Did it take you more time to do things, or how was it like to be like compared to your colleagues? Did you feel certain disadvantages or some differences?
There's of course, to say that everything is equal would be misleading. However, so let's say the learning process might take me a little bit longer to, memorize some programs. However, the thing that I was able to do that most of my sighted colleagues could not do is exactly that. I could memorize copious amounts of lines of code, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a, it's a self-defense mechanism. So I learned to have a pretty stellar memory. I learned to leverage multiple ways of getting input of data as quickly as possible to try to overcome and compensate. And so, everybody has different strengths, that they bring. And so, quite honestly, I knew, just like many marginalized communities do, many times we have to work twice as hard than our peers.
When you were becoming a programmer, did you have a mentor, someone who was like guiding you?
I had some great mentors, absolutely. Like I'm a huge fan of kind of mentoring and coaching. So yes, I had some great technology mentors. And now that I'm in, leadership, absolutely, I lean on, seasoned executives to help coach me overcoming, deficiencies or just gaps in knowledge. So I'm, yeah, I anybody who says like, oh no, I made it, I'm a self-made, da da da, like, I dispute most of that kind of stuff. Most people have had assistance somewhere along the lines to get to where you are. So, and I am so thankful of so many people who have helped me along my journey.
You did the right things as a blind person to learn programming, and then your career went on well. It's what point did you decide to start the Blind Institute of Technology, your baby?
Yeah, a great question, because it was about I was in my mid 30s when so a long time ago now, I started asking the question. So I had been in industry, 13, 14 years at that point in time. I started really asking the question, why am I the token blind person? And there's obviously got to be organizations that are out there, or the government, or somebody's got to be doing something about this. Because I was in pretty large organizations, and not only was I the token blind person, I did not hear of other, there were so few people, even in wheelchairs, so few people, no deaf people ever in the organizations I was at. So, and at that time, people who were on the spectrum, ASD, autism spectrum, like people, that wasn't something that was widely talked about. And it's still a thing. People are really afraid to talk about disability in the workplace. And per the World Health Organization, which nobody really had heard of the WHO before the pandemic, but yes, it's been around a while. So per the WHO, the leading cause of disability globally, is depression, anxiety.
Really?
Because there are some things going on in the world today, like the pandemic, that's creating this immense amount of pressure. And then you have other things going on, this climate change, which is whether people are buying into the science or not, it's causing anxiety, it's causing stress, it's causing depression. And then you got this thing called politics, that's pretty, it's not just the United States that people are really stressed out about all the politics that are going on. So, so you start adding all that up, and it's creating an immense amount of stress and anxiety. And, but those are topics that, unfortunately, again, disability in general is almost like a taboo conversation in organizations. And you can see that based on truly what happened with the George Floyd murder this year, and all the Black Lives Matter, where finally a video that, regardless of organizations and people trying to deface George Floyd as a human being, there is no disputing the fact that he was killed on camera. And based on that, you had this huge influx of unconscious bias training and ethnicity training and all kinds of different trainings like that, right? So all of a sudden, everybody was attempting, all these organizations were trying to jump on the bandwagon because of that. And yet it's not like, you know, especially here in the United States, the conversation of black and white is a new topic. But it took a horrendous video like that to actually put organizations kind of on alert to actually talk about it. But yet people with disabilities, that conversation is still very taboo. Now I leverage the Black Lives Matter and all those amazing movements when I talk to organizations, because ultimately BIT, we sell blind people, we sell people with disabilities, right? That's our job, is to go out there and open up doors to organizations and sell people with disabilities as a talent pool. And I leverage you know, movements like Black Lives Matter, and I explain to, or I talk to organizations about saying, when you're having these conversations of inclusion, let's be inclusive about our inclusion conversations. Because people with disabilities are, based on statistics here in the United States alone, about 70% of people with disabilities nationally are still unemployed. So it is a huge deficit of talent. And yet we, just within the blind visually impaired community, we have a higher percentage of post-secondary degrees than our fully able-bodied peers. So it's not an education deficit, it's a talent pool deficit within the Fortune 10,000 space.
You started Blind Institute of Technology to help solve the 70% unemployment, underemployment statistics, so that more blind people can get good jobs.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I leverage technology, amazing technology like Salesforce, to prove that when technology is accessible, people with disabilities, blind, visually impaired people, can absolutely go out there and produce and deliver.
How long has the organization been active?
So we will turn 8 years old in February. So we're still relatively young, but we, as you know, we're basically a startup, and you know, kind of the 1, 3, 5 year marks are always really important time frames when it comes to startups, even nonprofits like us, because we run as a social enterprise, which means 80% of our monies, 80% of our monies actually come from fee for service. So organizations such as Salesforce, such as Google, such as Aetna CVS, so many great organizations all over the country, they pay us to find them talent from the people with disabilities community. So we don't get paid unless we give somebody, an organization, a talented individual. And so we act as a nonprofit staffing agency. That's how we get paid.
Can you tell us about some of the biggest achievements of the organization? Like maybe how many people you've trained, what are their typical starting salaries, and maybe how many get jobs after they get trained?
Well, yeah. So overall, the organization, so, well, it's really exciting actually that we're talking today, because we, a great article, I will send it over to you. So October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And one of the young ladies that went through our training last fall ended up getting a job. And there was an article that Salesforce themselves, they actually did a great article on Acacia, and that actually came out in Salesforce's blog today. So Salesforce actually blogged about Blind Institute of Technology and one of the success stories. So it's really exciting when you get a company as big as Salesforce who is writing stories, success stories, on not only a small nonprofit like us, the achievements that are coming through by partnering with a juggernaut like Salesforce. But also this week we kick off our next class, and we actually have the biggest enrollment thus far. So we have 14 students, and what's really exciting about this is that it is across 4 countries. So we have a student from India, we have a student from North Macedonia, we have a student from Canada, and the rest are right here in the good old USA. So what's really exciting about this is that the word is getting out there to blind people all over the globe. And our average wage that we're getting people placed is more than $30 an hour.
Cool. And you place them as Salesforce admins, right?
Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're actually building our own internal kind of project-based business. So we have, mostly nonprofits right now that come to us looking for Salesforce help. So we're actually hiring some of those Salesforce admins internally ourselves because of the extra projects that we have coming along.
That's amazing. Maybe we can work on some of them together. Maybe I can help you with some.
I would love it. We have a couple of big projects coming along, actually. So, and as I'm helping some folks getting trained up, right, they're starting as admins, but some of these projects are a little bit bigger. And quite honestly, I would love for you or any of your listeners that would be willing to help coach and mentor some of these amazing admins, up with their professional skill development.
Cool. Everyone, please look up Mike Hess on LinkedIn. He's responsive. You can write to him, and maybe you guys can partner up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So let's go back to your success story, Mike. You mentioned Acacia Peran.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. Did you find the article?
I'm friends with her on LinkedIn. I didn't know she was your student.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. But I didn't know she was blind. Is she blind?
She is.
No way, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Amazing. She's working for Revelant, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. An amazing woman. She's out of Indianapolis right now. So, but we have people with disabilities, literally globally, but all over the United States that reach out to us. It's really exciting. My goal with the Salesforce training is to do 1 certification per quarter, and literally get more than 100 admins trained every single year. So that's my goal within the next, call it by the end of 21. That's what I'd love to be doing, and then see if we can even create more admins after that. And I'd love to be able to then take it to let's create some Salesforce developers and really build within that ecosystem.
Cool. That's amazing. So you guys train Salesforce admins, and then at the same time you have partners that hire your Salesforce admins, right?
Correct.
Salesforce admins, right?
Yeah, and that's still our biggest challenge is still it's the sales pitch. Like the gap. I shared a couple of those videos with you. You saw those, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and if you don't mind, I'd love for you to share those videos out with your audience as well, because part of the biggest part of what I have to do is educate individuals that the accessible technology levels the playing field, and you can easily see that with those 2 videos, right? Those 2 videos help people recognize, like, oh, okay, so accessible technology looks and sounds like this. Okay, not a big deal. However, our biggest challenge, of course, is just like you even said, like, I had no idea that this could be done. Well, think about how many other people that are in hiring positions also feel like that. And so for us, the only way that we can get over that is education. So we have to show more organizations, more hiring leaders that the technology is absolutely there. So people aren't solving for this reasonable accommodation. Salesforce already solved for reasonable accommodations. All you have to do is have a mindset shift where you can recognize that talent looks differently.
Interesting. Mike, can you give us, if to our viewers who are listening, and maybe they are hiring for Salesforce admins, Salesforce business analysts, can you give us the key 3 reasons why people should hire blind Salesforce admins?
Absolutely. So this year, the Accenture report came out, a new Accenture report came out, and organizations who commit to hiring people with disabilities have a 28% higher revenue. They have a more than 2 times higher net operating income than their own industry peers. So this is not a feel-good story. This is a business case. So organizations who commit to this reap financial benefits. And then on the flip side of, or not on the flip side of things, but to follow that line, that logic, is that people with disabilities, we don't job hop. We don't get jobs. Loyalty is a big thing with organizations nowadays. And it costs organizations real money when people just come and go every 18 to 24 months. And when you have this loyal set of teammates who really just, it's, when we feel comfortable, when we feel welcome, we don't leave. And it's because we still don't have the same opportunities as our fully able-bodied peers do. Now, obviously, we're trying to shift that, but it's going to take a few years before that really gets into play. But so organizations who embrace this, you are going to reap financial gains. You're going to reap employee loyalty, and then at the end of the day, the side effects that this has on your other teammates. So when they see like, oh, a blind person, like I would take 3 buses to get up to my job. And many times in, really cold, wintry days here in Colorado, I'd be fully decked out like I was going skiing, but, standing at the bus stop is a cold thing. And so when I'd be walking up to my office and people would see like, well, there's the blind guy, he's not late for work. It kind of helps morale, and it kind of stops the little bit of whining that can take place, because they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to whine. Like, look at the blind guy right there. So there are so many benefits that I believe people with disabilities add to an organization's culture and bottom line.
Interesting. From the reasons you mentioned, I understand the loyalty very much. That they're very grateful for the opportunity, so that's why they will stay loyal to the organization that gave them a chance. I think that's something that is rare in the IT community in US, and that's one of the complaints I think many people have about IT professionals, is that it's hard to hold on to them. Yeah, so that's a very strong case to hire blind Salesforce professionals. That's the other reason you mentioned is that they are more profitable. Yeah, companies that hire people with disabilities, according to the Accenture research, they are more profitable, I think you said.
They are, absolutely. And that came out, the Accenture index report. I'll make sure that I send that over to you so you can share that out with your audience members as well.
Why is that? Why could that be? What's the relationship between hiring a blind person and profitability?
So, great question. And they lay it out within the Accenture report, and it's broader than just blind people. But so what ends up happening when organizations commit to hiring people with disabilities, it ends up that their products and services become more usable by more people, period. So when you start to really embrace accessibility, not only from an internal teammate perspective, you realize that all of a sudden now you have new problem solvers helping you with the products and services that you as an organization are delivering. And when your products, just like Salesforce, are accessible, it makes it a better overall product, period. And they're absolutely able to quantify that. And so that's what makes these organizations more profitable, because their products and services become more usable.
Interesting. Fascinating. Mike, so you guys have been in operation for 8 years. You've had how many graduates of the 8 years?
Oh, well, so again, we only started the training on a kind of a full-time basis over the last couple of years.
I
So
see. Okay.
yeah, so, but you know, in the beginning, and we still, a good part of our business is, yes, we do a lot of the training, and we are Salesforce official training partner for people with disabilities nationally. And with this class, I can literally say internationally now. But you know, we also, again, if let's say blind, visually impaired people with disabilities come to us and they have other tech skills, right? There's a developer, they're project managers, there's business analysts. They come to us as well. There's all kinds of skilled individuals that reach out to us. And so again, our business model is still, we act as a nonprofit staffing agency. So the first 6 years while we were in existence, we were still helping people find jobs. Now with Salesforce though, we're really, really specific on saying, yes, and we still have people that reach out to us with all kinds of different backgrounds. But we have a real focus, because there's such a, we look at Salesforce as such a growth engine for our organization.
I see. I see. So initially you were like a staffing company like Kforce, like tech systems.
Exactly.
Now you do staffing and training.
Exactly. So if you look at our website, a lot of our language is in and around workforce development. And workforce development as a concept, you can't really talk about workforce development if you don't include education. And so but we don't look at education we don't want to do training just for training's sake. We want to focus on incredibly accessible ecosystems that have high employment growth opportunities.
Interesting. Now let's talk about, we discussed in quite a bit detail your organization. Now let's talk about the product of your organization, the Blind Salesforce Admins. Mike, can you tell me please, how does a blind Salesforce admin work? Like, how does he navigate? Is there like assistant tools you guys use? How do you do it, or how do your students do it?
Yeah, it's all so assistive technology, right? So screen readers, screen enlarging systems, braille readers, like all of, like it's you know, the good news is like all of that technology has been around for a long time. However, it's not the screen reader technology. Like I was saying, like that's been around. Literally, it started back in the 80s. Like this isn't about, you know, and it's gotten way better, of course, but it's not about the assistive technology as much. It's, you know, as developers, like let's say the framework of the platform. So what Salesforce has committed to doing is like, so for example, like in page editor, right, which is a pretty visual component where you drag and drop using a mouse elements, right, over, and it's very, very visual. However, the developers, and I actually know the developer who wrote the code. His name is Jesse. He's here in Colorado, Salesforce accessibility architect. He wrote the code to allow a screen reader to, instead of, you know, dragging and dropping with a mouse, he created code that allowed a screen reader user to be able to identify from one side of the screen and drop it on the other side of the screen. And that's that one of the videos that I shared with you is exactly that. Like how does some an admin do some of those really visual components, like, you know, organizing a screen, like, you know, with elements, like how is that done? But your amazing accessibility engineers, they weren't just focused on users. So, you know, let's say somebody's on the lightning instance, and they got to click on this field and get this data and that sort of thing. No. Your engineers went above and beyond to say, hey, we want to make sure that even the technical components on the inside are accessible, and they committed resources to making that happen. And then what's really exciting, like, so you're like, Jesse then puts the he takes that code and he puts it out there on GitHub. He's like, yeah, here's the code sample. Like, he wants to share this accessibility with anybody who can use it, which makes more environments, which makes it possible for more environments to become accessible. Like, that's what's really, I mean, like, I don't think there's enough praise I can go into, you know, so many individuals there at Salesforce.
So you're saying like the page layouts in Salesforce were written in a way that how do you, what's the terminal, visually impaired technology, visual assisting technology can interpret?
Assistive technology, yeah. So literally, exactly. So you can, so a screen reader user, somebody who has no sight at all, can absolutely manipulate all the elements on a screen. A very visual task can be completely done using the ear.
Interesting, fascinating. Wow. And what's the biggest fear preventing companies from hiring your students? Can you tell us, what's the biggest fear?
It just, people they don't know what they don't know. That's why, again, those videos, it's how do blind, the same questions that you have, right? Are the hiring managers have the same questions. Well, how does this and how does that? They just don't know how, you know, blind people, how deaf people, they just don't, they have a hard time trying to figure out how that happens. And I always say, like, hiring somebody who's blind or deaf or on the spectrum, like, many times, like 95% of the time, it's a technology solution. But guess what? Like, it's not like you as an organization has to invent any technology, because Salesforce already did the hard work. So it's literally just sharing, like, you know, the reasonable accommodation has already been done by Salesforce. And then if you think, well, what about your email, and what about, you know, all of those other, you know, supporting tools? Well, guess what? Microsoft and Gmail and Google, like, they've already done the work too.
Really?
So most organizations, they just don't know. And that's why we share those two videos. We want to get that information out there. Like, no, the hard work has already been done. Well, only thing that you need to do is be a little bit more accepting to what talent can look like.
Can you please tell me, in which industries do your graduates typically find jobs? Do you find it, like, is it the government, federal sector? Is it like big corporations like IBM? Or...
You know, so far we've had more takers in the nonprofit space. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe, one, it's a lot more challenging for nonprofits, even larger nonprofits, to be able to, from a budget perspective, be able to afford, you know, and that's why so many of them come directly to BIT, because we do nonprofit for nonprofit pricing, you know, so we know what the industry rates are out there. Mm-hmm. And as a fellow nonprofit, nobody can really beat our prices. We have ridiculously low prices because, again, we don't have to try to compete for, you know, owner shares or for, you know, revenue, that sort of thing. Like, we're mission oriented. So at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we're giving our people a really competitive salary. So that way so organizations can come to us, you know, whether it's staff aug work or even managed services work, and they're able to get so much more by working with us.
Awesome. Can you, if you don't mind, can you tell us what are the typical rates or ranges, so that if someone is listening, maybe they could reach out to you?
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah. So we do, so for our admin hours, and again, we do it in buckets, that sort of thing, but typically we're 60, 65 an hour, which, you know, most organizations, they say their nonprofit discount is like 125, 130 an hour. And it's just, to me, it's kind of ridiculous. I'm a free market guy, don't get me wrong. But boy, when I hear some of these prices, I'm just like, all you're doing is padding your bottom line. That's all you're doing at this point. And we don't need to do that. We just need to meet our mission.
Wow, fascinating. Good job. Amazing. Amazing job you're doing for your community. I feel like technology, I know, is good for immigrants, for career changes. I never thought that even for visually impaired people, it can be a savior.
It's well, technology in technology in general is it levels the playing field, right?
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. Yeah. I got a soft spot for for my friends in the immigrant community. I have there are so many marginalized communities, and we as people with disabilities we don't know the exact shoes of, let's say, black or brown people. We don't know the exact shoes of immigrants. We don't know those exact shoes. However, as a community, we are encompassing of all of those folks, because again, it's not, yes, I am Caucasian, and yes, I am male. However, the people with disabilities community is a very inclusive community, right? So it doesn't matter about your ethnicity. It doesn't matter about your relationship orientation, your religious orientation. It doesn't matter about any of those things. Anyone at any point in time can become disabled. And they say globally, per the World Health Organization, that people with disabilities are about 900 million globally.
In the US, how many blind Salesforce professionals do you think are there right now?
Oh, total?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Maybe a few dozen tops. That's why I feel like there's so much upside within this space. There's literally, we were the first organization in the country to start doing this. I know of one other program that is modestly successful. They're modestly successful. And the reason why I say modest is because they're able to get the training done, which I really applaud them for. However, they don't have the full workforce development ecosystem, so they're not having any success getting them placed at all. So they send their graduates over to us, which is totally fine, because we're getting them interviews, we're getting them jobs. That's what again, workforce development is what we do.
Cool. If someone wants to help you, if someone wants to help the Blind Institute of Technology, the best thing they can do is help your students find a job, right?
100%. If somebody wants to give us $50, I'm flattered with that. But I'd much rather, because every one of your listeners right now, everyone, just like you, says like, man, I know this executive, I know this hiring manager. All we want some equity in this area. Can you introduce us? We want an introduction. Like, keep your $50. I mean, thank you for that. But we don't want to be a charity. We want to be a workforce solution for people with disabilities. The only way to do that is to get help opening up doors.
And you guys are open. You would be fine with like internships, volunteer opportunities, apprenticeships. Doesn't have to be full-time.
Just make an introduction. We want to be able to prove ourselves. Absolutely.
Great. Just somewhere for your students to start building up the experience, right?
100%.
Wow, amazing. Cool. Now I'm going through my mind thinking whom can I connect you with, and I will drop some names to you later on.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity, sharing your platform, Salesforce Chef. I love the idea. I love what you're doing here. You got a great following, and I just really appreciate you bringing me on. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you, and I look forward to working with you on some other things.